The early participant feedback about Elm Street economics has been very good overall, but the most well-received segment has to be the one we call a return to the value proposition. Let us show you some of the highlights from the first half of the value proposition segment. We start with more man-on-the-street consumer insights. I won't play it here, but your consultant can show you this video later. In it, consumers talk about what they're still spending on. What are some of the things they're still indulging in and why? What are a few of the things they just refuse to cut back on? Because even in the most thrifty of households, there are exceptions to the rule of cutting back. One lady says she's still going to the movies, another to Starbucks, though not as often. One gentleman just got home from a family vacation. Another still takes his family to a favorite upscale restaurant because they know it will be a quality experience and it's worth the money. One young lady has cut back on everything that's not truly a need, except when it comes to her tattoos. The essence of Elm Street is to worry where it will do your business some good. You can worry all you want about the news coming out of Washington or Wall Street, but that's the macroeconomy, and all the worrying in the world doesn't influence change. However, if you focus on what's going on with your business on Main Street and your consumers on Elm Street, you can actually get something done. Likewise, it doesn't make too much sense to worry about the recession. A recession is defined as a negative growth in the GDP. You can't change that. What you can focus on is the microeconomy. And what we'd like you to think about instead of the word recession are the words suppression and oppression. Suppression means to hold back, restrain, curtail, or check spending. I might delay buying a new car if I fear the loss of my job. I might not go out to eat as often if I've taken an income cut, or maybe I should consider a more affordable alternative. Suppression is an internal force. It's self-discipline. Oppression, on the other hand, is to stop, subjugate, and be overwhelmed because of an outside force. In other words, I can't buy a new car if I just lost my job. I can't spend money on home improvements if I just lost my house. So, oppression means I can't or couldn't. Suppression means I won't or I shouldn't, or at least that's the way I'm leaning right now. The reason this is so critical because a lot of pundits suggest that consumers have given up on all of their want purchasing and are spending only on needs. The fact is, not all people define need in precisely the same way. People are cutting back on everything, right? Except that we've heard video testimony from real consumers who tell us they've cut back on everything except that they just bought a big screen TV, or except that they just take their family out to an upscale restaurant, or except that they go to the movies or get a tattoo or travel or still go to Starbucks. Everybody can find an exception for cutting back on their purchasing. And the question becomes, how do we make the participants in the room at your event be the exception to the rule? How can we make your advertisers the exception to the recession rule? It starts by going back to the basics. Companies still have to convince a consumer to say, gosh, you know what? I think I want or need your product or service more than I want my money. And that's where the conversation goes from here. The one thing that has changed is that you might need to target a different consumer today than the one you targeted last year. And the consumer you're targeting may have needs that look totally different than they did 1 or 2 years ago. Here's what we mean. Last year, you may have targeted a consumer who wanted a truck or SUV. This year, you might be smarter to focus on people who need a truck or SUV, contractors, small business owners, people who have a large family, or a boat to pull, or a camper, or other towable. Last year, you might have sold a Pontiac G6 as a hot little sports car. This year, it might be the economical alternative to an older car that's getting costly when it comes to repairs. Last year, you may have sold a Buick Lucerne as an upgrade from a Chevy Impala. This year, it might be an economical alternative to a Lexus or BMW. It's simply a matter of returning to the concept of offering a value proposition. The thing is, value is not defined by a company. It's defined by the consumer. So whenever reasonable, possible, and profitable, you have to play by the consumer's rules. By the way, these are rules that were covered in the first segment of the morning. For example, consumers are more cautious with credit, so you have to be aware of offers that could seem pushy. You have to consider Maybe giving a reward for cash purchases. You might want to offer layaway if it makes sense, or promote your financing offer at least as something you do to help people with their cash management. And create, by the way, a discreet space for their questions, because people have heard they could get turned down for credit now, and they don't want to be embarrassed by hearing that in front of other people. Another rule we discussed earlier is that things are not always as they seem, so consumers could have trust issues. You need to do everything you can to provide details, disclosure, transparency about your company and your offer. Help consumers comparison shop and offer more information abundantly, which is so much easier to do with the web as the resource you can provide. Advertisers should talk about their track record, get testimony from satisfied customers, talk about the citations and awards they've received, and get others to talk about their track record. People are now rattled about the way they invest, so it's time for clients to hedge their bets. Don't just talk about low price. Talk about how an economical alternative represents less risk. Don't talk about high quality alone. Explain how it lasts longer. Don't just sell them the next appliance they need. Sell them the one that will last, the last appliance they'll need. And don't just focus on cost. Consider presenting the cost of not, like the G6 presented as an economical alternative to finding yourself on the side of the road because you put off a repair on your '92 Buick. Consider the impact of the job market. There's a lot of unemployment, but there's also overemployment. People whose hours were cut back or who went from a 5-day week to a 4-day week at their main job and now have picked up a second job. Imagine how busy these people are. In what ways could the advertisers in the room help those folks move faster and respond to a more time-sensitive lifestyle? Can an advertiser's products or services help the consumer preserve and protect their current employment? Maybe that means selling them reliable transportation. You don't want to be late for work in a job environment like this. Or maybe they sell education, which could introduce a new skill set to the consumer. Or maybe they could offer equipment that would make them better at their job, including but not limited to apparel for the workplace. Consumers are thinking about the cost of energy. Should they put off buying the hybrid, or should they go ahead and buy it because gas is a little lower right now and the hybrids are a little cheaper? Or should they go ahead and buy one of those SUVs because gas isn't so expensive right now? Or maybe they're thinking, you know what, we were going to buy a furniture set last summer, but gas got so expensive we didn't dare. We couldn't afford to. But now with gas lower, maybe we can afford to go ahead with that furniture purchase. Next, if you think consumers are price conscious, here's what you need to realize. If you're trying to tell them buy right now and save 50%, the consumer has heard so much of this by now that they're thinking, you know what, if I don't buy right now, I save 100%. That means you simply have to focus on the value you add to someone's life, not just your sale price. You need to have unique attributes, your staff, your service, something that makes your purchase opportunity compelling. Another way to say it, absent a unique selling proposition, price becomes the default influence over every purchase decision. We talk about how customers have lost faith and that it's important to talk about your strength and heritage because they're no longer a given. And we talk about recession fatigue. You know what? Consumers are kind of tired of it. So don't add to or dwell on it by saying something like, gosh, we know life really stinks right now, so come on down and feel better because we're having a sale. That's not the way people want to hear it. You have to do what you can to amplify the optimistic. And there's lots of good news to amplify right now. Isn't it great that gasoline is so much cheaper than it was last summer? Isn't it great that inflation is under control? Isn't it great that there's a sale everywhere and it's a buyer's market and your dollar is more powerful than it's been for years now? Maybe even realize that the product or service an advertiser sells might be precisely the good news people are looking for. And for some people, that feel-good small indulgence might be a $600 golf club. We talk about the idea that the experience is important. These days, it's not as much about what I have as what I've done. So don't just emphasize buying the product, emphasize owning it. Explain how that product will enrich my life or my family. And don't just claim, demonstrate it. Give me some product trial or some testimonials. In the first segment of the morning during an Elm Street event, we covered a few rules that consumers are living by now. So during this segment, we help participants understand how to play by those consumers' rules. The value proposition segment goes on to brainstorm 10 things any company might consider as they look for ways of enhancing their value proposition in the eyes of the consumer. is another video demo like this one if you're interested. Just talk to your CSS consultant or drop me a note. It's Mike Anderson at csscenter.com. Thank you.